If I understand the sort of the mission of Net Nights in the group, and perhaps why some people are here, it's to think about who you are, what you're doing in life, and perhaps some skills that you might need to either make a change or get a job or do better on the job that you're in. Now, my job is not, my life is not completely dedicated to helping people with their careers per se, but everybody that I work with, whether it's high profile or not, but it's mostly leaders in public and private settings, they are interested in advancing themselves, and I've learned a lot over the years in many different environments. And the great thing about communications and some of the things we're going to talk about tonight is that it's all within your power to shape and to do. This is not an expensive hobby. This is not something where you need to hire someone like me. You can become a much more effective communicator if you just think about what it is you're doing. And so what I'm going to do tonight is spend a few minutes and going through essentially three different areas. One is what I call general, very general leadership communications. And I say leadership communications to distinguish communications from going into a corporation or an organization and talking to people about how to communicate with their employees and communicate information. Leadership communications is a different thing. And if you've been to Sidwell, or you're a graduate of Sidwell, if you live in Washington, leadership communications connote something a little bit different. So and some of those things have to do with being opinionated, striking an advocacy position, and other things that come with leadership, which usually is taking a risk. Second thing is I'll give a little bit of a flavor of messaging, which is sort of, everyone always talks about the message, and I don't want to get too preoccupied with that. I think beyond message, everybody gets preoccupied with what's the message, but really underneath it is what's the substance and what's the story. And then I'll do a little bit on Q&A, and that's Q&A whether you're applying for a job, whether you're being before a Senate committee to get sworn in or have to go through the murder board of a Senate inquiry to be appointed to a job. It could be in a PTA meeting on a critical issue. There's a lot of things about communications and some simple techniques that you should think about. And again, these are my points of view. You can have other people come in and they might have a different point of view. This is how I operate, this is how I think, this is how I work with my clients, and I've been pretty successful, but you will have to judge, how you want to do it. And the last thing, if we have time, is Evan Steinberg, who I'm sure you all know because he's a dedicated networker who's been here for coming to these events. He is going to subject himself in front of this large group to a very short Q&A that we're going to film or video, and then we'll replay. Now, there is no right way or wrong way to answer most things. He's just doing us a favor by doing this in front of you. And I should say that usually when I work on projects of communications, and by the way, this is just a small part of what I do. Most of it tends to be more strategic. This tends to be the implementation and tactical side. I would spend, for instance, if Evan was going to hire me, which he's already said he probably wants to do, I would probably spend 4 or 5 hours with just one person. And sometimes it's 3 and 4 sessions. And there's a whole host of issues that people want resolved, whether it's a crisis, whether it's rolling out a new product, whether it is a confirmation, whether it's a campaign, whether there was one client who had extreme nervousness when they communicated, to the point of paralysis. And this is a major corporation that you would all recognize, and it took a long time. We worked through it. And it was a big breakthrough for this person to be able to actually perform, if you will. So we're going to try to end up with that. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to fly through what normally takes 4 hours. This is going to be like speed dating, or so I understand. We're going to fly through this as quickly as possible. So let me get started. If I'm thinking about this group, and I'm thinking about perhaps why you might be here, which is I'm interested in a new career opportunity, I'm thinking about how do I take my career to a different level. The great thing about communications is you are the package. You don't have to rely necessarily on your experience or anything else. It's how you put yourself together, how you tell your story. And the first thing that people look to, and of course in this time when we've just had a new president inaugurated, and a lot of it has to do with what? Projecting confidence. And confidence is a huge issue. And again, to people who feel uncomfortable when they speak publicly, there are ways to work around it, and we'll talk about that. The second is clarity. The big mistake that most people make is what? They say too much. When you listen to most speeches or presentations, you sometimes walk away thinking, now what was the point or what's the main message? So clarity is hugely important. The last thing is commitment. And what do I mean by commitment? Commitment is a level of passion. People have to believe, and if you're leaders, and I'm teaching this or explaining this in the context of leadership communications, if you are a leader, and I presume everybody in here has an aspiration to be a leader of some kind in some organization, you have to lean into what you're saying and how you present yourself. So these are the three things, as I thought about tonight, that are relevant to whatever you're interested in to improve yourself as a communicator, whether it's a book club, a PTA meeting, a Senate hearing, a job interview, on TV, makes no difference. Again, communicating as a leader. What do you do as a leader? You take a position. Don't be afraid to take a position. That doesn't mean you have to be radical. It means you have to be clear and precise, and you have to believe. 2, present evidence. Oh, it's great to assert something, but the question is, so back it up with fact. 3rd, propose a course of action. Okay, so you want to lead us out of the economic mess you're in. What is your position? What is your course of action? So a leader is expected to provide a way forward. Speak simply. In Washington, we get bogged down in acronyms and highfalutin language. Speak simply. Speak clearly. I know all of this sounds very basic, but they're things that, even if you're accomplished communicators, and I've dealt with many accomplished communicators who still need to think things through. And then finally, press the case with conviction. If you're a leader, if you're looking for a job, anything you're trying to do, advocating a position, changing a law. I don't mean jump up and down. I don't mean cry. I mean people understand when you are pressing something with conviction, that you believe it. So I have the 5 things, and this is general communications, by the way. These are sort of general tips. And this is true in any sort of public meeting, whether it's my coming here to talk to 40 or 50 people, or you're going to speak to one-on-one with a teacher you don't like very much, or you want to improve something with your kid, or it doesn't make any difference. First and foremost, the audience. Who is your audience? And what moves them? Often when you are in a speaking environment, you think all 50 people in the room are your audience, when in fact it may be what? One person in there you want to communicate to. Or if you're speaking to a reporter, it's probably not the reporter, it's probably the reader. And it's not just any reader, it's a particular person. So you have to always think about who's my audience. 2, assemble the relevant data. There's lots of facts out there, there's lots of examples, but it doesn't mean you have to cram everything in. Which of the key examples, facts, and figures make your case? Align all the facts in the same direction. You can have some great facts, but if they sort of are, all your facts are going in this direction, but even though this is this great fact, I got to tell about how if you just do this, unemployment rate goes down, but it doesn't fit with your story, take it out. You can't say everything. Apply. This is super important, and I'll come back to it over and over again. Every single